A lot of people say compost tea doesn't really work and all the evidence is anecdotal, but it works for me. I'm happy. I feel like I'm seeing results. So it's up to you. I can't tell you, but I think you should try it and make your own informed decision from there. So I'm gonna go make some tea. I've had a couple of trees that were in really rough shape when we moved here, and I spray them with a foliar spray of compost tea, and I also would do a soil drench, along with several other things where I was giving them more fertilizer, and I was also mulching my ground. That way I could help retain that moisture and hopefully have a healthier tree, which has worked out for me. So I can't pinpoint one exact thing that I have done that has significantly changed the health of my trees, but I know doing all of these things together has worked out well for me. So I'm going to continue making compost tea and worm teas and giving it to the soil and foliarly to the plants because they have been healthy and I don't have any signs that it's not doing well. So while I fill this up, I'm going to go ahead and sift off the compost that I have from my modified Johnson-Su Bioreactor. That way it's nice and fine in the mesh bag I will put it in for making this compost. All right, so I grabbed my 1/8 inch screen sifter. That way if there are any worms in here, I will sift them out and they don't go and sit in this compost brew because I don't want them to die. I would like for them to continue on eating my compost and producing healthy worm castings. Good thing I decided to sift this because there's quite a few in here. There's at least 10. I still have half the bucket to go. To me, this is a really good sign of the quality of the compost, is that even with being shaken around, it's still staying in a clump form. So that means it has good moisture, which will definitely be beneficial for your microbes. But there's also a chance that there's mycelium here that is holding this together. So we're gonna break that up. Hopefully some of it will make its way through the sifter and we'll make it into our compost tea. And because I obviously found worms, I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of comb through this with my hand to see if I feel any worms or even some eggs and pull those out because I don't want to brew those. It all looks really good and healthy. I'm not seeing any worms in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and assume it's fine to use since I'm not seeing any worms in here. Right here is some wheat bran, and I know that if you want a fungally dominant compost tea brew, that you typically want to give them more of a carbohydrate like wheat bran, but if you want more of a bacteria rich compost brew, then you'd want to add in your simple sugars like molasses or brown sugar. But I'm going for more fungally dominated because this is going out into my orchard. So we just go ahead and add this on in, and now I'm just going to go ahead and mix this in real well. Now there is a lot of different things you can add into your compost tea brews, where I've seen people add in lactic acid in the beginning. They've also added in, even though they added a carbohydrate source, they've added in brown sugar or molasses. You can also add in a fertilizer where you're adding in fish emulsion or fish hydrolysate, which is also supposed to be very beneficial for the fungi in your soil. And you can also add in seaweed extract, azomite. There's an endless amount of things that you can add into your compost tea brews. But because I used the modified Johnson-Su Bioreactor, I decided I only want to use my compost because after this brews for 24 hours, I do want to check it with a microscope and see how well it has done as a brew. So that's why I'm only adding in just that compost. Even though I have a carbon filter on my water source, so it's removing any of the chlorine that's coming into here, I still want to play it safe because I have time. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my air pump and start aerating this water now. That way I can remove any of the chlorine that may still be in the water. So even though I do have that carbon filter on there, I'm going to go ahead and grab the air pump just so I can get this done within 2 to 3 hours, and then I can add in my compost and wheat bran. So I've made this little contraption where it's based off of, I believe, Oregon State University came out with how to make a compost tea brewer. I've seen this online though through lots of different places, and I just made my own and modified it to fit my needs better. And all I do is connect it. I can go ahead and put this in, let it bend. Now the entire bottom has an air ring on it. That way all of the water will be agitated from the air bubbles. I'm gonna go ahead and take my paint strainer bag, put all of this compost and wheat bran into here, tie it to my stick, and then we can go ahead and hang it inside of the drum with the water as it's being agitated. And we can do that for about 24 hours. I normally like to spray early in the morning, so my brew is not gonna be a full 24 hours. Even though it won't be a full 24 hours, it'll be more like 18. I know it'll still be healthy and good to use. So and right into the water it goes. I prefer to mix it and mash it up. That way all the microbes get loosened off of the soil that they're on, and they work their way into the water column. All right, so that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and let this brew until tomorrow morning when I'm ready to use it. And you wanna definitely put a lid on it because you're talking about microbes, and even though they're in the water, the sun and the UV rays are still gonna be penetrating it. So it's better to cover them and protect them. That way they don't die. I will come back in about 18 hours and we can go ahead and use this tomorrow morning. It's a perfect day to be spraying because it's overcast, so that way the microbes won't get killed off by the sun coming out and drying out the leaves right away. I know this tree looks really rough, and it is the end of spring going into fall, so this tree is pretty much done, and especially with the heat that we had a few weeks ago where it was 117 degrees out here, the tree's just not happy. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this a foliar feeding to help out the leaves that are here until it does go into full dormancy. Another thing I like to do is just do a root drench with this because it's going to be a little while before I apply any compost or fertilizer to this tree because it's going into dormancy. I'm going to go ahead and just give it the compost tea extract. That way it does get some of these beneficial microbes, and you can always do just a soil drenching with your compost tea because it's going to put that down in the root zone and it'll promote them with all those beneficial microbes to grow and be as happy and healthy as they can be. In the next video, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with the last bit of my compost tea and how I'm going to make that into something really special that should last in the garden for hundreds of years.